I think it was just like this surge of emotion. Like I couldn't believe that it was happening. I couldn't believe that it was happening on my very first like event I'm here with these strangers, but these women just loved all over me. And my cousin was with me at the time and my best friend was with me at the time. So I'm really thankful that, God did not allow me to have that experience of meeting my mother when I was alone. I don't know how I would have handled it if I was like by myself at home. It was very comforting to know that I was surrounded by women who just were loving all over me. So I cut the meeting short and drove about 30 minutes away to go meet my mom. And it was such a liberating experience, mainly because, I think before it was like baby birds where they don't realize that they can fly and they're trying to get out of the nest for the first time. They're kind of flapping their wings and looking down like, oh crap, the ground's beneath me. Like I can't do this. I feel like that's how I always felt, in my life up until this point. And meeting her, I finally felt like I could spread my wings and just soar. And so I credit a lot of the success of my business to that moment, because I think that's when I was able to fully step into really the true identity of who I am and show up in my most authentic self. Because that was a huge part of my life that I hadn't really got closure around.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is the award-winning Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, voracious book reader, and a skilled chef. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 64 of the Amani Experience Podcast. For this episode, we have Jereshia Hawk with us. Three of my favorite things about this episode is how Jereshia said that entrepreneurship is the economic equalizer. Love that. She told a really great story and personal story about how meeting her mom after 20 years and the effect that had on her. She made a nice analogy talking about baby birds. And then finally, she said that we should all challenge ourselves to see beyond what we currently know as reality. So I love that thinking big concept. I think you all are going to really enjoy the interview. Also, this week is our 1-year anniversary. So thanks for all the support over 1 year. 1 year ago, this week, last year, we started the show. It's been a great addition to kind of my marketing and just getting to know people. I view it as a master class, sitting down with very skilled and excellent people in their fields. Thanks for the support. Remember, if you want to reach me, podcast@amaniexperience.com is the email address. Please subscribe and leave a rating on the podcast app that you use. And now it's time to get to the show. Thanks again for listening. Our guest today is an income strategist and a recent corporate dropout who helps content creators, coach, and consultants 4x their revenue through online positioning and sales strategy. Our guest enjoys long walks down the school supply aisle at Target. Yes, she geeks out over new Post-it notes and pens. If you want to leverage corporate strategies to help your service-based business exponentially grow not only your impact, but your income, she is the woman for you. I would like to welcome Jereshia Hawk to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Hey, I'm super excited to be here.
We are excited to have you. We appreciate you taking time to join us today. We always do a geographical check-in. So tell us right now, where are you located?
I am in Detroit, Michigan, downtown Detroit.
Downtown Detroit. Love it. Love it. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, so out in West Bloomfield.
Nice. And then, just to kind of get us started off, why don't you summarize yourself in like 30 seconds or less?
Beyond what you already did. So other fun facts, I'm a new dog mom. I love helping people identify where they could be making more money in their business and really teaching and educating them on simple strategies to go about doing that.
Excellent. Well done. And what kind of dog did you just become a mom to?
A golden doodle. He's a toy size. They normally get like 80 pounds. He's capped out at about 20.
All right. So no big dogs for you.
No.
And then, so I understand when you went to school, you went to Western Michigan. That's correct?
Yes.
And explain to us what your major initially was and then why you decided to make a switch in majors.
Yeah, so I started off school in architecture. If anybody listening used to play the computer game The Sims, I used to geek out over that game, and I would, download architecture blueprints offline and build these houses for my Sims. And that's what really introduced me to like what even architecture was. And also in high school, we had architecture and engineering classes. And I remember the classes were like somewhat connected, but I remember thinking that I wasn't smart enough to be an engineer. So I'm like, I'm going to just stick with this house and design thing. So I went off to school. I started off school at Iowa State with a degree in architecture. And my sophomore year, I decided to switch to civil engineering and come back home to be closer to my family. So that's how I ended up my little college career path, I guess.
Excellent. And talk to us about your passion for 4,000-piece Lego sets. Where did that come from?
So as a kid, I loved playing Legos and I loved building. Maybe you guys remember those like car model sets. I think they still sell them at the stores. But I would always I just loved putting things together and building things. And even now as an adult, I think, we get so caught up in work and doing all this stuff that we forget about creating time to just be present and, do more like the hobby things, create things, not for the sake of hopefully generating revenue, but for creative sake. So I recently, this past December, so for Christmas, I got myself this 4,000 piece Disney Castle Lego set just to try to slow down in life and create for the sake of creating.
Wonderful. And how long did it take for you to complete this set?
It's still not done. So I'm still working on it. I haven't, made as much time as I probably need to get it finished, but it's still not done yet. We have the archway and some of the entryway done.
All right. Now, when you finish that, please send a picture over so we can share it, because that seems like it's going to be a pretty epic building there.
Will do.
All right. Now, once you finished college, what did you decide to do first?
So I was very fortunate. I had already got a full-time position offer a year before I graduated. So senior year of school was really, really nice because I wasn't carrying around this stress or worried about where am I going to go work and how am I going to make money. But I entered into corporate America working for a utility here in Michigan, Consumers Energy, and I was put into their engineering leadership program. So every 6 months, we changed jobs for the first 2 years. And about a year and a half in, I got pulled onto a $1.5 billion program to be a pipeline engineer. We were doing some, really intentional natural gas infrastructure replacement. So that was a project I ended up being on for the remainder of my time in corporate.
Right. And then as you were working in corporate America and for your corporate job, when did you realize that this might not be the path that you wanted to follow?
Yeah, so I never thought I was going to quit my job. Well, it was in my 15-year career plan, but not in the short term. But I think just being a minority female engineer, so often you're walking into a room and you're the only one. Even going through college, you're typically like one of 6 women in the classroom. And that's just the norm. But going through corporate, and I was very blessed and just grateful that I was afforded a lot of opportunities. I was on this leadership program. I had these amazing mentors that were just pouring into me. I was really taking advantage of the resources that we had available, and a lot of opportunities were coming because of it. But far too often, I still was the only woman or the only woman of color that was sitting at the table. And that frustration really led me to getting heavily involved in our diversity and inclusion initiatives at the company, getting involved with our employee resource groups, and just trying to find this outlet to help other women who looked like me get the golden keys, quote unquote, so they could have a seat at the table too. And then I started thinking even externally, how can I start making this impact outside of my organization? And that's when I really started dipping my toe into this world of like coaching and consulting.
Good. All right. And if I recall correctly, you first started your business kind of while you were working at the engineering, for the utility in Michigan, but you had another business you started in college called Lovestruck.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Lovestruck and how that was the genesis of your entrepreneurial kind of ventures.
Yeah. So I ran out of financial aid my senior year of school, and I didn't know that financial aid could run out until I got this lovely email from my college letting me know that, your senior year of school, you're out of financial aid. So I had to figure out a way that I was going to come up with this money to pay for school. And I grew up without my parents. My grandmother and aunt raised me. They provided a roof over my head to get me through high school. But pretty much after that, I was self-sufficient. So I was trying to come up with these ways of like, how can I legally make over $10,000 in a very short time frame? And I was really big into fashion. I loved clothes. At the time, I was actually doing auto shows for Chrysler. So I decided that, why not? I had like $2,500 saved in my bank account. And I was like, let me just start an online clothing store. And I'll start, by selling shoes. And that kind of organically grew through Instagram and Google being my educator, like not knowing, I knew nothing about business. But within 7 days, we had the store up online. We had a website. I had my first 7, cases of wholesale products, had my LLC and just all the things that you need. And 14 months later, made over $50,000, paid for school, went to Thailand, bought my first car, and was able to walk across the stage.
Boom. Yeah. So you started early and you had that kind of energy going for you at a very young age. Congrats.
Thanks.
Sure. Now, in your opinion, as you've kind of made your ascension and now you're doing what you do now, what is important for creative professionals such as yourself and myself to succeed in today's business environment?
I think having an online presence is really critical, but not just having like a website that's, stagnant and passive online, or having a Facebook page but no content, but just being really intentional about, creating your online persona. So if somebody does Google you, that there is content through live. I think live stream video is probably the most powerful, but having some sort of medium where people can really get to know who you are and the values that you're about. Even if you look at the recent, endorsement that Nike made, people aren't just looking at companies to just buy a product anymore. I think people are really starting to look at not just, can this company solve my problem, but does this company have values, and are their core values aligned with my core values? And that's influencing people's buying decisions. So I think that's really important for business owners to be intentional and think about on how are they creating content that is readily available and easily accessible to individuals who are looking for a solution to not just, prove that they can solve the problem, deliver results with their product, but also share their core values and connect with people on a more intimate level.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned live streaming. Any other platforms that you feel we should keep an eye on? Right now, it's like fall 2018. What are you looking ahead? What platforms do you think we should kind of keep a close eye on?
I'm a huge fan of Facebook. Facebook live stream is like my platform of choice. I don't think Facebook's going to be dying anytime soon. If not, I think they're going to be taking over. They're definitely one of the top 4 companies that Facebook, Amazon, Apple, I'd say those are platforms that are in Google. Those platforms are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And even if maybe you guys are familiar with the book 4, it really dives into how these 4 businesses have been able to grow and have such a huge influence on, everyday human beings from a buying perspective and just from an engagement perspective. But I just think live stream video is a really powerful tool because, I think audio is great because you're literally plugged into somebody's earbuds. But the beautiful thing about video is you can see body language and create more of that intimate connection virtually online. So I think Facebook, or even if you're doing leveraging more of the YouTube channel and playing around with both of those platforms. But I think Facebook's a great place to start and to really build a presence.
Excellent. Now, as you started your business, you've had many kind of successes, many kind of achievements and milestones. So far, what do you feel was the turning point in your career?
I would say it was about maybe 10 months into building my business. I was still working full time. I had recently got promoted to leading this $400 million pipeline project. So, work schedule was insane. And I was also studying to get my MBA because I thought I was going to go back to grad school. And, you don't need to go back to grad school. Just start a business and that'll be your MBA education. But about 10 months in of just trying to figure this thing out, I was just testing and throwing spaghetti at a wall and just waiting for something to stick. But I remember, back then I was charging like ridiculously low rates because I didn't think that I could charge more. And I launched my program. I filled it, but I was basically almost paying people to work with me, how cheap it was. And then I decided that, I'm going to double my rate and people bought it again, but it was still like maybe $300 for 3 months of working together. So then I tried to double it again and charge $300 a month, and nobody bought. And I was like really butthurt and heartbroken because I'm like, I'm finally trying to charge my value, but nobody wants to pay for it. And that was when I really learned and realized that up until that point, people were paying money because they just liked me, and they believed in me enough that they would pay and take the risk that, take the risk that if I just work with Jereshia, that I'll get results. But as I started increasing the price, I realized that I have to be very intent, especially in the service-based business world. People are buying the promise. If you buy a physical product, they can see the promise in hand. Like if you buy a water bottle, you can touch that water bottle, see that water bottle. Like the solution is already in your hand. When you're purchasing a service, on the other hand, you don't get that product until after you've paid and after you've worked to receive the deliverable. So you're really upfront. There's a higher level of trust that needs to be taken into consideration. And there has to be a very more intentionality on clarity around what problem you're actually solving and who you're solving it for. So that was a really defining moment where I had to really reevaluate how I was showing up in my business and also just how I was packaging my offers. And I learned how to package a service into a product by creating a signature service. So I think that was a huge defining moment because I thought I was going to quit. And like, I'm not cut out for this. I'll just go be a good engineer.
No. Okay. So we're thankful you didn't quit. So good job with sticking with it, being resilient. You spoke about you talked about knowing your value. For people who are struggling with their self-worth in terms of charging rates and sticking to the rates and getting them, what advice would you give them so that they can maintain a necessary level of self-worth?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is we need to get out of being, a lot of that is ego. We're thinking about what I'm worth, what I can charge, how much money I want to make. And at the end of the day, when you are building a business, the business purpose is to solve somebody else's problem. So I think that we have our own money stories and we have our own money beliefs, and we all carry that. But we need to make sure that we're not projecting our limiting money beliefs on potential clients, because they don't carry, and we shouldn't assume that they carry the same negative money stories that we believe. So I think that's the first thing. But the second is also, we have got to understand that you're really doing individuals a disservice when you aren't charging the rate that you should be charging, because the transformation happens after the transaction. And very rarely does it ever happen before. So if you have a service that, delivers, like let's say you're using a complete extreme, you're like on death row and you have to hire a lawyer to come in and, help beat your case. If you understand the value of that transformation, like you could literally save your life if you have a good enough lawyer who can defend you in court, you're not going to skimp out on that. And you're willing to make that investment because it is a big enough transformation for, that you're investing in. So I think a lot of the time, I'm using that as an extreme just so you guys can understand like that analogy. But if you're coaching a client, if they're not paying for if they're not making an energetic investment, whether that's with their time, with their energy, or more than likely, in our case, with money, they're not going to necessarily show up and do the work that's required to get the result that you're supporting them on getting. So I just think it's very, very important to make sure that your price point matches the return on the investment of the transformation that you're providing, because you need to make sure, in order to get that client the result, they have to show up and do the work. You may be guiding them through the process, but if they're not fully committed, i.e., a lot of the time is if we don't pay enough for it, we're not going to show up and do it, or we'll buy the book and then it sits on the shelf because it was only $10, versus if we spent $10,000 on that book, best believe, I know for me, I'm reading every page more than once. So I think it's a mindset shift that has to happen, and really getting out of this employee mindset. A lot of us are just used to only earning money based off of somebody else telling us how much our time is worth. And when you're building and growing your own business, I think it's very important to understand that you're no longer exchanging time for money. You're exchanging, money for a particular and specific problem that you're solving, or a transformation. And even if you can do it in 30 minutes, you shouldn't get paid because you did it in 30 minutes. You should be paid because you are faster and able to deliver high quality results and help somebody get that transformation quicker. So I hope that sheds some light and gives some clarity.
It does. It does. Excellent answer. Like, that's something many people struggle with. So just how you say you just gave a very different perspective on how to address that. So I appreciate that. Why do you love what you do?
Oh, man. Being able to know that I'm having a direct impact on changing the quality of life for somebody else is, I mean, I don't have kids, but I'm assuming that that's what parents must feel like, that you're playing a role that is helping somebody step into their fullest potential, to believe in something beyond what they currently know as reality, and you're supporting them along that journey. It is the most rewarding feeling ever. So I just really believe that entrepreneurship is like the economic equalizer. Being a woman and being a double minority, being a woman and a woman of color, I think there's just systematically a lot of disadvantages that are just in place, like kind of regardless, with equal pay or access to opportunities. But the beautiful thing I love about, business and about money is it's green. It doesn't have a gender. It doesn't know ethnic race. Like it's an equal playing field a lot of the time. So I just think that I love that aspect of it, that we can have. I believe it really is a gateway to the freedom that I think we're all as humans entitled to be experiencing on life. And I just really love the fact that I get to play a critical role in like my clients' lives and the people that, I end up crossing paths with. So they can start experiencing that, like the fruitful and the abundance that this life really has for us.
Definitely. I like how you said it's an economic equalizer. Based on when you first started in the entrepreneur world to what you know now, what is something that really kind of continues to surprise you or caught you off guard with kind of working in this space?
Oh, man. I would say, you kind of think that, if I hit this milestone, I'll have arrived and then I figured everything out. That's not the case at all. I'm learning now to just expect it. Before I'm like, oh my gosh, if I can make, $5,000 in a month, I'm made. And then you hit 5K and it's like, okay, now if I hit 10K in a month, I'm made. Okay. Or then it was like the next milestone. If I hit $30,000 in a month, I'll have everything figured out. And every time I hit those milestones, it's like this new discovery phase that overcomes, with these new internal challenges more so than external. For me, like there's been a lot of self-sabotage that has come up as I was moving through my business and hitting these key milestones that I had set out to hit. Because I think a lot of the time I set goals that I didn't really truly believe deep down were possible to achieve, or I just didn't know anybody else who had done it. And then when I did it, it was like, oh crap, wait a minute. It was hard to like actually receive it. So I think that that's something I thought would go away after a while. And I'm realizing it never goes away. There's always a next level. There's always something to progress and move towards. But you learn to get better at managing those transitional periods better, but they never really go away.
They never do. You mentioned self-sabotage. How have you been able to work through that and not let that hold you back?
That's been tough. I think the first thing is being self-aware enough to even realize that like self-sabotage is a real thing. I didn't know, I wasn't conscious of that when I first started in my business, and I didn't really feel it or experience it until I hit my first 6 figures. So the first year in business, or the first like 12 months in business or so, we hit 6 figures, and that it happened so fast. But I remember when I quit my job, I moved downtown. I got like the floor to ceiling apartment high rise. I got the dog, like I got everything on my vision board. And I noticed myself like stalling out, and I couldn't understand why. And I realized I was self-sabotaging my own success, because I think internally I had put this limit or this barrier around how much I was allowed to achieve. And being back in corporate, it would have taken me another decade to earn as much money as I'm earning in my business now. So it's just, society has, I think a lot of the time, and how we grow up and the experiences we've gone through have put these subconscious beliefs on us about what we can achieve, how fast we can achieve it, who's allowed to have what. And so I think that the first thing was just, learning more about our subconscious and how the subconscious mind actually influences everything else. And, I would read books about it, listen to podcasts about it, get introduced to it from my mastermind sisters and things like that. So that was probably a big thing, is just being even self-aware. And once you are self-aware, I can now start to see the patterns and see the trigger points of typically, like, I can now kind of forecast when I can sense the self-sabotage is about to creep in. So now that I can kind of project and anticipate when it's going to happen, I'm way more intentional on changing my environment or bringing in the right people that I need to bring in to support me through that transition, because I know it's going to come.
Right. Interesting. Cool. Thanks for sharing. That's something that many people deal with.
Yeah.
Now, what is something that scares you?
I'd say the thing that scares me the most is complacency.
Okay. Tell us why.
Yeah. And I don't mean that in the sense that you can't be content and satisfied with where you're at in life, or with what you have, or with what your aspirations are. But I hope, I'm fearful. I don't want to say fearful, because I don't know. That's like a whole other conversation about my thoughts on fear. But to answer your question, I don't ever want to find myself in a place where I am stagnant and complacent, in the sense that I feel like I know everything, or that I have, quote unquote, arrived. Like, I really hope to stay in a mindset of continuously learning, continuously improving, continuously just doing my best to be a better human. So yeah, that's like probably one of my biggest, quote unquote, fears.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fear, you mentioned fear. Like, how do you handle fear? And a lot of people, there's one saying that says, feel the fear and go through it anyways. What do you do to not let fear stop you from continuing to move forward?
I think it's a lot of the time. I know I did before. I had this arrogance that, I'm not going to have any fear. I'm not afraid. And that's like complete BS. The fear never really goes away. Like, I think and if you don't feel the fear, I feel like you're probably not pushing the boundaries hard enough. Because if you're constantly staying in this place of complacency and comfort, that's where you feel safe. And in order for you to grow and to expand and to like elevate to that next level, you should feel the fear. Like, you should be pushing yourself to your boundaries, to the edge of your comfort zone, for that feeling to come up. So if I notice that I haven't felt fear in a whatever period of time, I get worried, because I know that I'm probably sitting in a place of comfort and complacency. Like, why am I not pushing the boundaries? Why am I not challenging myself? So if I look to have the fear, more than anything else. I don't try to avoid it. And like you mentioned, like, you have to just choose to do it anyways. Like, I started CrossFit 2 weeks ago.
All right. Watch out.
There was a lot of fear. Okay. I've been thinking about going to CrossFit since I moved downtown. So for the past year, CrossFit is literally on the ground floor of my building. So every day I walk past CrossFit when I'm walking the dog. And for over a year, I was afraid to do CrossFit, because I'm like, it looks too intense. I can't do that. My body is not capable of that, because I haven't worked out since high school. And I made the decision this year, like 2 weeks ago, that like, screw the fear. Like, if that's the thing that scares you, that's the one room you need to be in every morning at 6:30.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yes. Well, keep us posted on the CrossFit progress. Let us know how you continue to do well with that. We want to hear. Now, your industry, in terms of like coaching, income strategy, your industry is very crowded, and it's become very crowded very quickly. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
That's a really good question. It's probably the most frequent question I get from potential clients. And I think because we are in a market that is like online marketing and online sales, it is getting very, very saturated. And I think the most important thing for people to realize is more so thinking about the market sophistication, thinking about who our clients and our customers are. Our market is getting smarter. They're getting more sophisticated. So, 10 years ago, you could make very general, broad claims about how you can help somebody get a result, and people would believe it. But now people, we're not dumb. Like, we're way smarter than I think we used to be, and way more, I think, engaged in that purchasing process than we had been before. So I think the best way for you to really stand out is actually by niching down and getting more specific and creating more polarizing, not just content, but being more polarizing in who you work for and who you don't support, what type of clients you want to bring on and what type of clients you do not want to work with. And I call it the P.O.P method. Really pick one person, pick one problem, and package one process. I think in order for us to truly, stand out, is we need to be more specific and more granular and speak more to an individual versus these broad, brushed over audience, like target market audiences.
Good. Okay. So we understand how you distinguish yourself. We respect that. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
I'd say it goes back to the one I mentioned earlier, that third time I tried to launch the program and nobody bought.
Right.
That was a huge defining moment for me. Because it was like a choice. Are you going to still keep doing this even though it's hard? Are you going to still keep giving the time, the money, the resources, the energy that you're giving it, even though you're not getting the results that you want right now, or the results that, like, my ego, I said I should and I am entitled to be receiving by now? Like, that was a huge moment for me, because I still chose to get back up and chose to make some really, I ended up hiring 2 new coaches after that, and spent more money than I had made up until this point in my business, because I really believed in, and I didn't know exactly how it was going to be packaged, but I believed in the impact that I was hoping to make enough. So I would still go back to that one. That's probably one of the most defining moments in my business career up until this point.
Excellent. And you showed resilience by getting back up and move forward. So well done. In the past, you said that lack of patience can cripple an entrepreneur. Why do you feel that way?
So especially in this day and age, everything is literally at our fingertips. If we want food, there's Uber Eats. If we need a ride, like, you can literally get on a phone and within 2 minutes, a car is sitting outside of your door. And I think a lot of the time, because of maybe some of the online marketing that we see, you see people sharing these really elaborate results and how fast they were able to get it. But very few people pull back the full curtain. So if they're saying, I'll show you how to make 6 figures in 6 months, or how to make, we had a 7-figure launch in 7 days. And it's not to say that the thing isn't true, but they're not really giving the full story on, this is what was required for me to get that result. Or they're not saying, yeah, I had a 7-figure launch in 7 days, but I've been working on my business for the last decade. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of the time we get too caught up on, like, the Instagram and Facebook highlight reel, without taking a moment to actually see what the real is, like the REAL of what's required to get that result. So I just think I caution a lot of the time of, students who come my way or clients I've worked with. They're like, I want this result in this amount of time, and which is fine. And we can develop a strategy around that. But more importantly, let's really look at what's required for you to get this result. And do you have the capacity to be able to do these things that are required for you to get this result? And a lot of the time, a lot more patience just needs to be built into that process in order for those results to come to fruition.
Definitely. As you continue to have more success in your business and level up and continue to level up, you now begin to acquire more critics, or haters, as we call them. How do you handle your critics?
I welcome them. I love trolls. That's how I know I've made it. When we get, like, the trolls and the haters in the comments, it's like we have arrived. So I look at it as a good thing. Everybody's going to have their opinion and have something to say. And, I respect people for having their opinion and for feeling as if they have a voice and for using their voice. And if it gets too rowdy, I have no problem inviting people to the block party. They can go hang out with each other on the block party with themselves. And I love social media because it's super easy to do that. So it's just normally 2 or 3 clicks of a button, and they're gracefully invited to the block party and off of your timeline. So yeah.
The block party. Love it. I might have to borrow that. Is that okay?
Oh, take it. Run with it.
Tell us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, wow. I'd say probably the one that's immediately come to my mind, my mother leaving when I was 2. That had a huge impact on my life and how I grew up and how I think my identity has evolved as a woman. So, she left when I was 2 years old, and I stayed with my dad for a couple of years, and then my grandmother and aunt raised me. But like 23, 24 years later, I met her again for the first time. So that was maybe 2 years ago. I think maybe now, 1.5 years, 2 years ago when I met her. And that was such a defining moment, like I think up until then for, the 23 or 24 years of life I had been living, I had been carrying around this weight of, not feeling worthy enough, not feeling like I was lovable, like questioning and just wondering like why I don't understand how a mother can leave their child. And, not really understanding why she left, not knowing who she was. Like I definitely struggled with that over the years. And Facebook was how we got reconnected. And I think It's so interesting because that's where my business is built off of Facebook. Like Facebook has been our bread and butter. And, my visibility online, I'm not sure if this is how she found me or what, but I knew that she was watching me for a couple of years before she met me after I met her. And it's just like, I love how like it all came full circle. And how the thing that's really giving me access to my freedom and helping me grow my business, which was Facebook's platform and live video, is also the thing that set me free by meeting my mother and closing that chapter in my life. So that's probably the main one that I would reference when you ask that question.
Definitely. Now, what was that experience like when you were able to meet her in person? What was going through your mind? How did it meet your expectations? Like, that's an amazing experience. Kind of walk us through your feelings when you had the chance to meet her finally.
Yeah. So I was at a Panera Bread when I got the message from her, and it was my first like in-person meetup for my business. So there was like 8 women who were there. We were at Panera. It was basically a co-working session. Everybody brought their laptop and whatever they were working on, and we just worked on it together. And it was supposed to go for like another 2 hours. But I got this message from my mom on Facebook while I was literally mac and cheese was sitting in front of me. And I broke down in Panera and started crying my eyes out. And, half the women at the table, I had no idea who they were. They were just random people I met online who came to my event because I saw a Facebook post. And I think it was just like this surge of emotion. Like I couldn't believe that it was happening. I couldn't believe that it was happening on my very first like event I'm here with these strangers, but these women just loved all over me. And my cousin was with me at the time, and my best friend was with me at the time. So I'm really thankful that, God did not allow me to have that experience of meeting my mother when I was alone. I don't know how I would have handled it if I was like by myself at home. It was very comforting to know that I was surrounded by women who just were loving all over me. So I cut the meeting short and drove about 30 minutes away to go meet my mom. And it was such a liberating experience, mainly because, I think before it was like baby birds where they don't realize that they can fly and they're trying to get out of the nest for the first time. They're kind of flapping their wings and looking down like, oh crap, the ground's beneath me. Like I can't do this. I feel like that's how I always felt, in my life up until this point. And meeting her, I finally felt like I could spread my wings and just soar. And so I credit a lot of the success of my business to that moment, because I think that's when I was able to fully step into really the true identity of who I am and show up in my most authentic self. Because that was a huge part of my life that I hadn't really got closure around.
Excellent. I love the analogy of the baby bird finding their wings. That's a great analogy. Thanks for sharing. Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Man, I want to say my grandmother and my aunt were. Like, I'd say it's a combination. My grandmother she was a very tough cookie. She's like the godfather of grandmothers. She's the one where if a picture is taken, she will not be smiling. She was very tough, but she was the one woman that always showed me grace in the moments where I needed it most. It wasn't a very she wasn't the one to give you hugs and to give you kisses and to give you words of encouragement. But when, ever I really made big mistakes, or whenever I messed up as a kid, or just, kind of stumbled, and like we all do growing up, she was the one that always showed me grace. And my aunt, she was also, they were just both very tough cookie women, and they just expected a lot out of you. But from her at a young age, she really just taught me the importance of, in life, nobody owes you anything. And, you shouldn't be walking around with this expectation that as if the world owes you something, that you really are, your success and what you get is really based off of your merit and, people's kind heart. So those two, I'd say, definitely very, very influential people in my life, and some really good lessons I've, still carry to this day. I learned from them.
Yeah, definitely seems like they taught you some great lessons. Love it. Love it. Now, Jereshia, what do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
I'd say live video. I think I was, I know we met at Podcast Movement and I didn't have my podcast and I've wanted a podcast for like 2 years. And I'm like, I don't know, I can't talk on audio. But I'm like, you'll go on live video and talk, live on camera, but you won't talk with no camera and just a microphone. Like it makes no sense. So I'd say like I get a lot of a lot of people come to me asking for how do you find the courage and how do you know what to say on live video. So I think just like real lifetime, like a lifetime interaction, whether that's live or in person, is something I do really well, just building relationships and building connections.
Right. Now, you have a voice for radio as well, so I don't think you can have any issues with the podcast as well. I'm happy to hear that you're going to get it started, so we can't wait to hear you live just on the radio. So now we get both, live video and live radio.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. I've also read where you enjoy this quote that says, never eat alone. Why do you enjoy that quote so much?
This was something that really set me apart in corporate. And I think really the foundation of how important relationships are and taking the time to build relationships. So this is before I knew that that's actually a book. I didn't know this until maybe like 2 years into my career. But when I went into corporate America, you're in this 9,000 person organization. And I was put into this leadership program. There was maybe 30 of us. And I kept asking myself, well, how can I make sure that people know who I am at the end of this 2 years? I don't want to just be another engineer that they're kind of just checking the box on. I want them to know who Jereshia Hawk is. I want them to know who I am and what I stand for. So I made this commitment to myself that I would never eat alone. I'm like, the CEO and the VPs, they all have to eat like the rest of us. So maybe I can get on their calendar. And that's how I grew so many of my relationships, how I gained, I call them my personal board of directors. They're like my mentors. It was because I looked at, okay, what areas in business or just what areas of the organization am I interested in learning more about? And I would just reach out to people and ask if they would have lunch with me. But that really propelled my career. And I think was probably one of the key things that really afforded me access to so many opportunities that I was given, because I was just taking the time to get to know people and taking the time to, build those relationships, over some spaghetti and noodles.
Nice. Well done. Well done. Now, when you were 21 years old, you were in Michigan, correct?
Yes.
We're going to go back and talk to 21-year-old Jereshia. What kind of advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
It's going to be okay. It'll all work out. I was in college and I felt like, school is tough. Being an engineer, like I said, I didn't think I was smart enough to do it. Even when I switched, I didn't think I was going to be smart enough to do it. Engineering will teach you rigor for sure. You got to take Calc 1, 2, 3 and DiffyQ as prereqs before you get into the program. But I would really just tell myself that, what you're going through now is going to be the foundation of the person that you are becoming. So don't try to rush through these challenging times. Don't try to, pray and ask God to take them away. Because I really understand now how, those challenging moments in our life are the thing that define so much of who we are and are really like the foundation of like the blessing and the abundance that's going to come after. So I would just tell myself it's going to be all right. Just keep on keeping on. And like, this is not in vain.
Good. Great advice. What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
I don't know. I feel like I'm still probably learning it, so I probably haven't recognized it. I guess maybe the best way to answer that is, I don't know if I have a good answer for this. Well, maybe cut me at what I just said. I don't think I have a good answer for this.
That works. If you're still learning, we can keep it moving.
Yeah.
We'll do that. No worries. Perhaps in a second interview, you'll have an answer by then.
Maybe.
Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence would be, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
I would say really, I'm not sure if this is the exact same format as yours, but really, how can you maybe more of a question. How can you really challenge yourself to see beyond what you currently know as reality? That's a Post-it note that I have on my computer, something I look at every day. I just really encourage people not to look and define themselves by their current circumstances, but to really challenge themselves and continuously ask yourself, how can I not only think beyond what I currently know as reality, but how can I start being that person now, today?
Excellent. I like that you shared that. What is one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
So I was reading a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. He's a billionaire hedge fund manager.
Yes,
and
great book.
Yeah, but one thing that I love and picked up from him is the daily observations. So as he was growing his hedge fund, he's like, well, how can I teach other people to not only think the way that I think, but make decisions the way that I make decisions? So we started documenting these daily observations where he would share that with the organization, share that with team members so they could learn to think and make decisions the way that he thought and made decisions. And that's something that I've been, trying to incorporate more, is actually documenting the decisions that I am making and also the thought process on how I'm making those decisions. So, as we grow the business, I can use that as a tool to teach my team, but also from like a learning mechanism as we're, growing and testing out new things, we can see and really have analytical data to go back and look on to say, this is what's worked and what didn't work and why it didn't work and what our decision-making process was, like the thought process was, so we can see where we can make pivots and changes.
Excellent. You spoke about books. You gave us one good book recommendation. We are very big readers, voracious readers here on the podcast. If there's a few more books that you recommend people stop what they're doing right now and start to read them immediately, what books would you recommend?
For everybody who's building a business, thinking about building a business, successful in business, read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. That would be one I'd recommend day in and day out. Is one that I pretty much make all of my students read and my clients read. So Mike Michalowicz, his whole goal is to cure entrepreneurial poverty. And the book is just a very simple process to put in place to make sure that your business is always in the green, that you are profitable first, and that you're always making sure that you're doing what's required so you can make sure that your business is profitable. Like, I don't even want to recommend any others. I want everybody just to go read that book. That's a really, really good one.
Good. Excellent recommendation. We'll add it to the show notes. Let's see here. So before we finish off with our final two questions, tell people how they can find you online.
Yeah, I'm really, really heavy on Facebook. So Jereshia Hawk, Instagram, Jereshia Hawk, website, JereshiaHawk.com. So pretty much if you just Google Jereshia Hawk, you can find me on all the major social media platforms and hang out with me there.
Sounds wonderful. What's the definition of the Hawk hustle?
Oh, man. It's really about start small, scale fast. I'm really big. I think the Hawk hustle is really defining. I think it's kind of redefining what the normal term of hustle is. I think a lot of time people think of hustle as, team, no sleep, grind. It has to be like this grimy, like thing to grow and build what you want. But I really believe that you can grow and scale fast when you actually do less so you can earn more. So the Hawk hustle is really just rooted in simple, proven processes and simple strategies that are easy to, simple to digest, a bit easier to actually implement because they're not super fancy. They're not overly complicated. They're rooted in foundational principles that, I think really will last, beyond the time and beyond the currents of, changing technology and things like that.
Great. The Hawk hustle. Love it. Now, growing up in Michigan, are you a Detroit Tigers fan?
I go to sports, when people buy me a ticket. Other than that, I really don't keep up with them that much.
Fair enough. Let's imagine that you're at Tiger Stadium and they're announcing you're coming out to the field. What song is playing as you walk out to the field?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, I'm just telling you the first thing off my mind. Some Cardi B song would probably be playing.
Pick one.
If this were like, oh, gosh. I'm really bad at the song names. So the one with her and Bruno Mars.
Okay, yeah.
I can't remember the name of it.
Finesse.
Yeah, that'd probably be playing if I was walking out right now.
It's my big bronze boogie, got all them girls shook. My big fat, got all them boys cooked. We're from dollar bills, now we popping rubber bands. Bruno sang to me while I do my money dance. Like, hey. Flexing on the gram like, hey. Hit the Lil Jon, okay. Oh yeah, we dripping and finesse and getting paid.
Ooh, don't we look good together? There's a reason why they watch all night long. Yeah, I know we'll turn heads forever. So tonight,
Nice. Perfect. Cool. Well, before we end with our final question, I just want to say thank you very much for being on our show. It was such a pleasure to meet you at Podcast Movement. We talked for like an hour and a half. We were sitting there in the ballroom just chatting about like business and life, and glad to have met you there. I look forward to keeping in touch. I can't wait to hear your podcast. So just want to say thanks very much. And we let our guests end off the show with any last minute words of wisdom or advice. So I'll say thank you again and take us home.
Yeah, I would maybe just take a moment to pause and just reflect. I think one thing that we forget to do often, we're so focused on what the next goal is and where we're going to be going and what else we need to accomplish that we can forget to just pull our heads up and see how far we have come. So I'd really encourage everybody here to, what were you praying for a year ago that you've already been blessed with? And just take a moment to show gratitude for that and to recognize that and to just appreciate that and just be present in this moment with, the abundance that you currently have in life and to truly just be grateful for it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Feel free to email us at podcast@amaniexperience.com. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on and share this podcast with anyone you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon for our next episode.